Hey everybody, welcome back to Not Another Tooling Podcast. I'm Austin Pearson with my co-host Matt Malcolm on mile 347
Honestly,
just for today.
first time it's come out today.
Yeah. Every time I talk to you, you're on that treadmill, Matt. It's good. It's good. Today I am fresh back from the Gartner Infrastructure and Operations Conference in London this week, meeting with a lot of Gartner analysts, lots and lots of you wonderful audience as well this week. And one hot topic that came up this week that we want to talk about today is tooling when it comes to the cloud. And particularly we're talking about, monitoring, observability, service management, the usual stuff that we always talk about on this podcast. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because Gartner put up this slide there, and they were talking about managing cloud, and they had well over 100 vendors in this big thing. They're doing a quadrant on it next year, I think, but I haven't done one yet. And it was so big. I mean, you'd be there for years just trying to evaluate what half of these people are doing and whether it could fit and all that sort of stuff. And you just thought, nobody's going to get anywhere with this. So today we're going to talk about observability, monitoring, etc. in the cloud. So let's start with what people are doing today. I think, and I think there's typically two approaches to this. Number one is, oh well, I'm in Azure, so therefore I must use Azure Monitor, or I'm in AWS, so I must use CloudWatch. Bling 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 bling. And the second one is, oh well, I've got PRTG or I've got SolarWinds, so I'll just do that with it and see what works. What are you seeing, Matt? Are you seeing something similar?
That's the majority, and I think it comes down to why are they in the cloud in the first place? And if you know why they're in the cloud in the first place, that probably let you know. You could ask that question, why they're in the cloud in the first place, and then you can probably guess the kind of stack that they have supporting them. And then in most cases, it's either they're net new, they're creating new applications and they're doing it from the ground up within the cloud, whatever respective cloud, where they're more likely to natively use whatever capability exists, or some cloud-only native solutions, fairly common. But if they've come from on-premise and moved to cloud, most of the time they're dragging all that shit with them, most of the time, because it's what they've got and they need it to cover the whole estate, and then it become this multi-cloud scenario with all complexity. But those are the two bits, really. It's either net new from the ground up, most likely going to be native stuff, or they've come from on-premise and they're bringing as much of that as they can, or as little, but normally you can see some residue from on-premise bleeding into cloud. It doesn't always work.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I do think I see people making a lot of mistakes with those, and you've just started to allude to some of that there with your comments, right? So the first, and I think it's a good thing you mentioned there about like, why are people moving to the cloud? Because there's a lot of backlash, right? People originally started moving for cost reasons, thought it'd be cheaper. I think pretty much everyone is aware it's not cheaper now.
Yeah.
Right.
That's bonkers, isn't it? The narrative that people got them there. Now it's like people actively, I've seen a few articles on LinkedIn and stuff where people are actively, right, the strategy now is back to on-premise, thanks.
Yeah, loads of that. And there's people like Nutanix doing so well out of that, out people trying to move back. But I think the people that we're seeing using it well are using it for agility, right? Where there are typically a bit of a bigger organization, or even the smaller organizations that want quick access to a huge, great big stack and new services and all that good sort of stuff that would take them ages to do themselves. That's definitely where I see businesses doing well. So when we look at that, that kind of cloud vendor or cloud native, whatever tooling piece that people are using, that's where they're going, all right, we're gonna stand up some new services in AWS or whatever. So therefore, we'll just use the AWS tooling that comes with it. And I think there's two major problems I see with that. Number one is cost, because these things look super cheap on the surface because they're all consumption based.
Yeah.
Is, oh, well, that's fine. We only need CPU, memory disk, blah, 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 or up, down, whatever it is, it'll be fine. Then something starts to go wrong, you turn this on, and something else starts to go wrong, you turn that on, and then, oh, that's a nice new feature, we'll turn that on. And then all of a sudden you get a bill for your last month's monitoring usage, and it's through the roof.
Yeah.
And what started as a cheap project suddenly becomes absolutely huge. But the bigger problem that I see is that as an organization, you're not looking at what happens when my service goes wrong, and how do I go find the troubleshoot that problem as quickly as I can, get the incident to the right resolver group first time, and fix it and automate as much as we can so that our clients get the best experience. And because a lot of this stuff is hybrid still,
Yeah.
right? Or it's a mixture of, I've lifted and shifted stuff that was in my database, so it may as well be like legacy in my data center rather than not in my database, so it may as well be legacy. And as well as new stuff. So you've got old tools looking at the old stuff, and new tools looking at new stuff. And when something goes wrong because they're connected, you're using a database that you've had for years on-prem to power your new fancy new app that you've built in Azure, for example. When something goes wrong, you've got two people with red screens. They don't know what each other is doing. There's no connectivity between the two, and the cloud stuff is way more complex than the on-prem stuff, because you've got all these Kubernetes clusters flying around and being spun up left, right, and center, and you end up making the problem worse, not better, I think. What do you see, Matt?
Myriad of those things, really. I was thinking about from a selection point of view. I don't think it matters so much if they're using a native product stack or legacy product stack, because most of the legacy product stacks can see enough of what's going on in the new world.
Oh, I'd question that.
Well, in my mind, I'm thinking I would prefer to have overall less capability for a more complete picture.
Boom.
That's what I prefer. Because, I think going all in the cloud stuff, and it's going to be the nth degree of detail, super great, fine, and then the on-premise are fine. But if you haven't piecing that together, then it's not pointless, but it's very difficult to actually do your job. So I think, lesser quality, more complete picture. That's one way strategic conversation will be with the customer is, what can we do all of this with? You might not get all the bells and whistles, but you're going to see everything. That's fundamental.
I love that answer, Matt. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, right? Because when you look at cloud and even what we're doing with our phones and stuff like this, when you go to the App Store, you don't go study every single app and go, oh, does it have every single thing? You get something that's 70-80% of the way there, and then you go, right, that's perfect. I just need to get on and be able to do my job. That will do. And it's the same when you're engineering something in the cloud, right? You get to an MVP. You don't have the completed thing, and then you iterate it using Agile or something like that as you go. And I think it's the same here. It's like, you don't need all the bells and whistles of everything for anything. You just need, when something goes wrong, can I see where the problem is? Can I get it to the right home? Can we solve that? And that, if that means I don't have the latest blah 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 widget thing, who cares?
AI? Has it not got AI on it? Is it not got all the machine learning and all the rest of the buzzwords going around. No, you don't need none of that shit really. You need something that's going to see
Over,
everything and get it done.
yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know anyone who's using that in production. Anyone who's anywhere near mature enough to even think about using AI in
Yeah.
production IT operations today, considering most people can't even get CMDB up to date.
Yeah, still, man, still now. I mean, I mean, the CNDB topic, we've had that before. That's, yeah,
Well,
no, let's talk about CNDB right now. CNDB in cloud.
yeah,
Like, I mean, I've definitely, especially as a technical person on the other end of the CNDB back in the day, like, there's definitely been conflict in like, well, I don't need a CNDB if it's here, or I do need a CNDB if it's here. So let's say we have pure cloud account, right? Just everything's in the cloud, whatever instance doesn't matter. But their service management operations is in one of the ITSM tools. There's lots of them there. CNDB, no CNDB. Like where's like, and to what degree as well? Because those are sometimes contentious conversations. What's like your exposure experience to people who are predominantly cloud, but then their operations and service management team are, using one of the tools that exists in the market.
I think everybody would love to have a CMDB, even for the cloud. But what I've seen is a lot of people going, it's too hard to do. And we've got all these ethereal services that just go bing, 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 bing all over the show. And we've no idea how to do that in a CMDB. So we've just decided we're not going to do it and we'll live without it. And because it's too hard, really. And it isn't too hard. They just need to think about it a little bit more, but and get away from the old ways of thinking of doing CMDB legacy where you scanned your estate every few days and blah blah blah. But yeah, there's not many people doing it well yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
But you're right. This is like absolutely essential because you've still got the same problem, right? Of, well, we're going to change something in the cloud. So where do we go look to see what the impact is? Because the impact is still going to be to other parts of applications and services that we're running and stuff like that. So you need to be able to go and see that in real time somewhere. You need to take that through a process of, typically the cab, right? So that everybody's happy with it and it's documented. And then you need to choose a time and go through that change window and all that sort of stuff. If you're not doing that through an ITSM and a CMDB tool, then there's massive risk. But also on the other side is when something goes wrong, that cloud, your services that in the cloud aren't looked after by one person who is Mr. Cloud, right? You've got all these different teams and they look after apps and website and databases and blah, 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 blah. So if you don't have a CMDB with up-to-date CIs mapped against all the owners, etc., in your ITSM tool, guess what happens? It takes you ages to get the right incident to the right home, and it's painful.
Yeah, I got I'm like mostly in agreement, right? But obviously my background is that more, I don't know what you want to call it, traditional way. But I've been working with a couple of clients over the last year or so, one in particular more recently, and they're a new organization, new products, and all the rest of it. Cool product, does its job. They do not have any of the debt that someone traditionally would bring to the table with all of those things.
Yep.
So I'm in sessions with their team and they need to do X. By the end of the day, it's done. There hasn't been any convoluted change process or crazy approvals or documentation or whatever else. What I'm getting at is like, should we just not be doing things that way anyway? I know we're going to slightly off tangent of the topic, but be it cloud or wherever, same process exists. But we've just dragged up all this debt with us, and the debt meaning like it takes 2 days to implement something, it could be done in 2 minutes. Why?
Yep.
Like that's quite cool to see when you work, because I've come from that more static and slower background, as most of us, probably most listeners.
Yep.
But the newer way that's where my question is came from, the CNDB. And it's the new way that, what do I need CNDB for? I can see it's there. Like, what do I need that for? Why do I need to keep a catalog of my changes? I can see it in the repository. I can see it in the repo. It's there. It's like there's a different way of thinking. I would imagine service management will just massively evolve over the coming years, but it's cloud or not, where things are just faster and better versus all this debt we've been bringing to the table. Sorry, I know that isn't the exact topic, but it's sort of interwoven a little bit.
No, you're right, and it's a really interesting one, because the I think for some companies, you start off, I don't know, born on the cloud company or whatever, and you start off like you're building your services in AWS, and it's all there on a single screen. And why do you need all this sort of stuff? And I think there's two bits to that. Number one is very quickly gets to the stage where it's not just that. Even if it's something as simple as all of our people, or some of our people, are sat in an office, in a shared office space somewhere, and suddenly we've got some routers and we need to know what the connectivity problems is. And when we call up Microsoft, they say, well, have you checked your network, and can you prove it's not that? Through to SaaS services like your CRM being not in AWS or Microsoft or wherever it is. You might be using a different CRM system, and so suddenly you've got multiple things, and you no longer can just look at a CloudWatch dashboard and see what's going on, right? Because these cloud tools tend to be very good at their own stuff and nothing else. But also, I think more importantly is, as you scale your business out, really the only way you can scale your business effectively is through having good processes, right? It's fine when you're a small company and yada yada, but as soon as you start growing, then you need everybody to be doing the same thing and following the same process and troubleshooting the same way and whatever. Otherwise you get into a complete and utter mess, and then James is configuring cloud accounts this way, and Johnny is doing it something differently, and then all of a sudden everything takes forever to troubleshoot whenever anything goes wrong. So
that's valid.
Yeah, thanks. Took us down a nice path there. It was good. So, but it's interesting. It leads on to another question I had, which was, should we be looking at cloud tooling any different to we looking at on-prem tooling? Is there any difference in maybe the capabilities we need? And we'll come on to the approach and where people should start in a minute. But from a capability perspective, do you think there's, and I think there is, so I'll dive in straight away with one, is like that discovery thing that we've talked about there. Like, you can't have a tool that discovers things once every 24 hours and then takes 24 hours to replicate that into your CMDB. It just doesn't work in the cloud world. So you need something that is as near to real time as you can possibly have. And you could argue that you need that on-prem these days. If you're running Kubernetes or containers or something on-prem, then you're going to need a similar type scenario, I think.
Just come to the early question then. So I don't think it matters if it's a cloud or cloud native product or not. It's always going to be back to the requirements, right? What can do it?
Yep.
Is it some really super advanced new thing that has been born out of AWS and this is the best thing for it? And then it can also fulfill future requirements. If you've got some on-prem stuff, then it doesn't really matter. If it's the other way around and someone's got their act together and their old school on-prem stuff can now do the other stuff, cool. Doesn't really matter. It's whatever fits the requirements. And in that is also like the operability, the pricing, the long-term sustainability of that thing based upon whatever that strategy is. They're in the cloud or in wherever for a reason. Is this thing going to serve that reason for the lifetime of that strategy? Things always change, but that's how I frame it. So I wouldn't be, if I'm in cloud, I wouldn't go, we better get a cloud product. you can do a bit of market exercise. I mean, likelihood he's going to go down that route. And likewise, if he was on premise, you'd probably spend time over there. But ultimately, should be indifferent whether it's cloud native or not. But it will be requirements and how low do you need to go. But back to my
Yep.
earlier point is, as long as I've got something which I can see the full picture, if it's 90% quality compared to 100%, but I can see the full picture, I prefer that. So that's where I'll be navigating most of it, I think. Otherwise, well, you know, quite a fragmented solution, getting the best over here and the best over here, and you never really need it. Never, ever really need best and best and best. So yeah, complete
Yep.
picture, and I don't care whether it's one product or another, as long as the requirements are met for the lifetime of whatever this current strategy is.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. So, so final question then, where should people start? If they're moving into the cloud, or what, there's something in the cloud and they're thinking, right, we need some tools to be able to see what's going on. What questions should they be asking themselves?
There's no short answer really. They've got to go through the process if they're getting a product for a certain reason. Like you got to review products, you got to analyze. Like you've got to go through those steps to make sure you've got your shit together. You know what you need, and then you know where you need to go. That's very basic activity. If they decide to spend that early activity looking in cloud native forums and communities and whatever else to find the right products, fine. But ultimately, you've got to get your scope together, what you're trying to achieve now and in the future, and then go fishing. I mean,
And that's it. So what are you trying to achieve both now and in the future? I think it's very easy to go down that technical route, as always, of like, okay, right, I need this functionality, I need to be able to see these type of services, etc. But you know, like you said in the beginning, why are they in the cloud in the first place? And assuming, you know, that it's for agility reasons, then if you're trying to create a better experience for your customer, then when you go to look at a tool, you should be looking at, okay, how do we get the best experience for the customer? You know, if we can develop this stuff and we can push out changes every week to the mobile app and all this cool stuff, then when something goes wrong, because it is going to go wrong, then that customer needs to have the best experience possible. So understanding that and using that as the basis for your selection versus, okay, we now need to be able to see has services of XYZ in a dashboard, is back to something we harp on about every single time podcast. Is like, okay, understand the business requirements, understand the value that your customers need, internal and external, before you go down the route of technical evaluation.
it sounds a bit noddy, doesn't it? Going back to that, but that's what it is, isn't it? Like, just what do you need it for? Versus what happens? What happens, right? So people move or plan to move. Their current vendor, whoever that is, for this capability, sells them whatever's needed, and then the thing they ask, the requirements becomes what this product can do to the nth degree. So the requirements are pretty much only ever going to be that product anyway, but all the things they probably don't need. So just functionally what they're going to try to achieve over the lifespan of them being there, then you can decide the right requirements and go for the normal. I mean, it's an exercise, isn't it? You need to go for the exercise. I'll coming back to said about discovery, so more traditional discovery.
Yeah.
So yes, 24 hours. I don't know where that came from really. Why every day? Why every day? Who knows? Who knows? At night time when no one's working, like it matters. Well, like some places it did, and I probably blew up a couple of networks back in the day, but you know that's behind me now. So every day, yeah, for normal traditional stuff, but a lot of those older discovery solutions can still do things more live, whether that's more frequently or event driven. So you can still achieve like close to a real-time picture with a lot of the more older school products, but you shouldn't want to, because if your environment's changing that quick, how realistic is it? You need to have a like for like picture in your discovery product, which is going to feed a static system that no one's looking at in real time. So I'd be looking at like a separation of the overall impact and topology of stuff. I'd want more static, and this is the stuff that's going to go over there and stay there and make my decisions on. But the live stuff, the real time stuff, I'm not bothered. Like that's going to change. And then the levels it changes that as well. Why am I going to bring those lower levels in, which doesn't really make a difference from like a fundamental impact topology? Doesn't really matter. So I'll enough information over here to make a decision. For the real time stuff, then I'm using whatever these products are, these real time things that looking for all of it, be that monitoring product or whatever else. But I don't want that monitoring product to throw the real time view into my service management tool because I don't need a real time view, certainly at the lower level these products can offer. So for me, if I was thinking of a terminology, just on the C&DB topic, it would almost be like a federated C&DB approach. That's what I would want to do for these cloud scenarios. I get my lower, slower moving, more static, high level stuff over here. But the high moving, high velocity, lots of change, that sits in this other product. Ultimately, I get a federated view across multi-products, but I don't fill up my C&DB with loads of stuff, which is unnecessary. Anyway, that's what I've done in the past. That's how I would normally go about it, because trying to like fill the C&DB with loads of low level stuff, you just piss people off.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you move into more of a problem management than an incident management. Often with these services that I was working with a company who they'd spin up something to just serve adverts at halftime in the football, and that was it. And then they spin it down again. Gaming company was, so what were the live odds on something? So it was perfect for that, right? It didn't need huge on-prem infrastructure. You spin it up for 30 seconds and down again, and away you go. And you're right, by the time somebody's created an incident on that, it's gone.
Yeah.
But what they did need is, well, actually, if that didn't perform that well or whatever, we need to be able to go back and troubleshoot it. And so we need not just the monitoring, but we do need to know what service was affected and what CI as part of the chain was causing the issue. But you don't need to store that forever, right? You, to your point, it doesn't need to be there for forever and a day. So you got a load of crap in your CMDB, but you do need to be able to effectively problem manage the problem even.
Yeah. No, there's a really broad brush statement here. Like, so this conversation we're having now is mostly based on people making a move to or always built themselves from the cloud in a roundabout way, cloud or ephemeral infrastructure, whatever. Like, build better apps.
Yep.
Build better apps. Stop building apps that keep breaking and we're gonna keep monitoring and doing and stuff with. Why do I need all the monitoring and event managing, all these solutions and the automation and everything else? Just build better apps. Surely you can build app to be intuitive enough that it fixes itself and doesn't bother anybody. That's mostly feasible, elusively saying. But like, build better apps, yeah. Like, I would see a future where tools as a whole should be more and more redundant.
Yeah.
That's the goal to my developer. I'm building this product. I want it to be a lights out version of this product. I don't want anybody to have to do anything ever. Go build it, please. Like, that's what the future would likely be. Fix itself, do whatever else, no tools. So we don't have to have these kind of conversations.
Definitely a trend that I'm starting to see is no ops, or ideally no incidents. That's the goal, right? For sure. And I think that is a great subject that we could put on another podcast, I think, because we could talk about it for hours, and we've talked a lot this podcast. So thank you for bearing with us. Listeners, been a little bit longer than our usual stint, but lots to cover in this subject. So we've been talking about cloud management and where you would look at tooling. And we talked about where are people starting today, which is either they're using cloud native tools or they're using what they've already got and trying to make that work in the cloud. Mistakes people are making is these things, the cloud native stuff tends to end up way more expensive than you thought it was. And really, you're not getting the end-to-end visibility that you need. And you made a very important point, probably the best point of the whole podcast, which is you'd rather have less capability for better end-to-end picture, because that when something goes wrong, you need to see where the problem is and be able to fix it very quickly. That's what you should be thinking about. We said, is it different to on-premise? We said, well, Not really. But there are probably some technical things like discovery where you might need some slightly different capabilities. And then we talked about CMDB and whether CMDB is relevant in the cloud or not. And we suggested that it probably is as you scale up, might not be as you're very small business is more on the cloud, but as you scale up, it definitely is relevant. And that everyone should start by looking at what they are trying to achieve as a business, as usual. Why are you in the cloud? If you're there to give your customers better experience, then think about that when you are selecting tools, not thinking about technical functionality. Woo!
Good summary.
It was a good one today, Matt. Really enjoyed that. Thank you very much. I hope you've walked far in that.
1 mile.
Not bad. Not bad going. One day we're just gonna have to start speeding it up. I need a little remote control so I can start it and speed it up while we're talking. Right, thank you very much everybody for watching. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please fire them off to us or put them in the comments below. And if you would like to be a guest on a future edition of the podcast, or you've got a topic that you'd like us to cover, then please get in touch and we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Bye.